Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Jefferson, and I will be your moderator for today. And I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we have panelists from different parts of the country. But now I am going to turn it over. Oh, and before I turn it over to Miss Daniels, if you have any questions, and I will reiterate this later on, if you have any questions, please place it in the Q&A box below. So if you have any questions, please place in the Q&A box below. And now I will turn you over to Miss Diana Daniels. Miss Daniels?
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you and everyone that's taken the time out to be on this conference call. Welcome to the 60th Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee celebration. This is a virtual educational summit, and it's titled, Is Black Achievement Under Attack? I am Diana Daniels, Executive Director of the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. I wish to thank Wallace College for the use of their facilities hosting the Virtual Education Summit. A special thanks to Michael Jefferson, owner of JC Connect from Indianapolis, Indiana, the engineer and moderator for this event. Thank you to the Jefferson family, his wife especially, for her advice and support in making this happen today. The virtual summit is being held in partnership with the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color, a statewide organization focused on academic success for low-performing schools, and the 60th Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee National Organizing Committee. Our questions for this virtual educational summit is Black achievement under attack? Black achievement can be influenced by a variety of factors, both individual and systemic. Together, these factors can either present challenges or offer opportunities, influencing overall achievement and success for Black children. For the next hour, you will hear from experts on this topic. We have a special guest with us today. Dr. Kelly Daniels will introduce Dr. Adelaide Sanford, whom will give us our charge for today.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Daniels, and I am here in Philadelphia with Dr. Adelaide Sanford, whom many of you know here in Selma. Dr. Sanford's legacy is cemented in the civil rights education and advocacy for her people. Known to many as Queen Mother, Dr. Sanford is 99 years young. Her work in Africa is well documented by schools she has supported, study tours she has attended. She met my mother on one of them with Dr. Asa Hilliard. In honor of Dr. Sanford, the Indiana Council of Educating Students of Color is giving away free copies of her books to 5 people. The book titled From Enslavement to Belovedness for My People, published by Third World Press. The winners of this lovely gift are Terrence Dunn, Alexa Ferguson, Stacy Womble, Dominique Drain, Kathleen Watt. Maybe Wyatt, sorry. Winners have been notified by email and can receive their copy of the book, Enslavement to Belovedness, by contacting the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Adelaide Sanford.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly Daniels, for all the finger work that you've done since you've been here with the computers and with our mind at the same time. And thank you to Diana from the time that we met at the airport going to Egypt. Seems like 100 years ago. The question of Black achievement under attack is a fascinating topic. Of course, it's under attack. There's no question about it. The issue is because of standardized testing, which takes place in the schools, we're able to measure that level of achievement. However, when we measure the achievement, we cannot neglect understanding that that achievement does not occur in a vacuum, that the achievement of people of African ancestry is more than schooling. So when we talk about achievement, we have to realize as a people that our achievement level is not only indicated by schooling, but it's indicated by the totality of who we are. And if you are in a situation in schooling where you have uncertified teachers, where they do not have the textbooks, the resources, the instructional material, and the level of expectation for children of African ancestry, then it's not fair just to measure whether they are achieving or not, because we have not looked at what's necessary to be in place for achievement to take place. So let us keep in mind that we are talking about Black achievement as measured by standardized testing. And of course, the answer is they are under attack. And they are under attack because all aspects of their life is under attack. Their physical being is under attack. Their feeling of who they are and what they stand for is under attack. What do we do about that? First, we have to be aware that schooling is not the totality of education. What we do and think about ourselves, our family, where we live, our community, also affects the achievement of children. And we have to look at what is available to them. So my first charge to our constituency is make sure that you understand what is necessary for academic achievement to take place in a school setting, and then to look at the other aspects of our life, our health, our mental attitude, our thoughts about the future, what we think about the education of other people who are making decisions that affect our lives. They affect climate change, they affect disease, they affect viruses, they affect the world in totality. So the charge is understand that we're measuring academic achievement by standardized tests when we raise that question. Is it under threat? Yes, it is under threat. The totality of the existence of our people is under threat. And we measure it academically by achievement tests. We must enlarge our vision to understand that it goes beyond that. So my charge to you is to understand that Black achievement is dependent upon many factors, schooling of which is one, that we measure and talk about, but we have to consider the totality of the lives of these children and their families. I thank you for this opportunity to broaden our understanding of the concepts that we use and that are imposed upon us by the system out there that says this is what you have to show to prove that you are achieving. It is more than that. I thank you so very much for this opportunity.
That was great.
Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you very much for that, because these are the words that we need to hear each and every day, and we need to understand our role and what we play in the role of education. Most of us here are educators. I'm third generation teacher in my family. And because I'm a third generation teacher, it is my responsibility to make sure we pass along to everyone that comes in front of us that wealth and that knowledge that was passed on to us. I'm originally from the state of Mississippi. My wife grew up in Mississippi. We grew up in a small, segregated school. And my wife's parents didn't go beyond high school. My grandmother was an elementary teacher. And because of this, we have to make sure that we continue to pass on. And thank you very much, Dr. Sanford, for what you mentioned, because it is so needed and we need to hear that. And I will go ahead and pass it on to Miss Daniels. And I believe that Miss Daniels, you will be the timekeeper
That is
for
correct.
the other members that we have coming on. And for the other members that we have coming on here, and for the three individuals, the individuals that we have are Dr. Pat Payne, Dr. Carol Lee, Dr. Kenneth Wesson, Dr. Ray Winbush. And these are the individuals that we have that are our speakers for today. And as I mentioned, Miss Diana Daniels is going to be the timekeeper. But the order that we will follow will be Dr. Carol Lee first up, Dr. Winbush will follow, followed by Dr. Pat Payne, and the final speaker for today will be Dr. Wesson. And each presenter will speak for approximately 15 minutes. And if you in the audience, if you have any questions whatsoever, please make sure that it is listed in the Q&A box in the below. And I'll make sure that after each presentation, or possibly it probably would be best at the end, after each presentation is over, that then I will supply the question to the prospective panelist. If you have a question for a particular panelist, please make sure you list the panelist it is for. If it is for Dr. Lee, please make sure question for Dr. Lee. If it is for a question for Dr. Winbush, and so on and so forth. And that way we will make sure we get to, your question is presented to the proper person. Now, as for Dr. Lee, she is the Edwina, and please, Dr. Lee, please correct me if I make a mistake. But she is the Edwina S. Terry Professor Emerita, School of Education and Social Policy at Northwestern University. She's also a member of National Academy of Education, American Educational Research Association Fellow, National Conference on Language and Literacy, and the President of the National Academy of Education. The title of her presentation, Parallel Paths Needed to Achieve Academic Excellence for African American Students, Our Systemic Response. So with that being said, I will make sure that I turn this over now to Dr. Lee. And Dr. Lee, you are up now. So thank you very much. And you're still on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So first, thank you for inviting me. And I am honored and humbled to follow Mama Adelaide. Adelaide, you know me more as Safisha Matabidi, Haki's wife. Third World Press that published your memoir. So I want to start by drawing from the lessons. Well, I also want to make one comment also first, that Dr. Sanford was, absolutely correct about this restrictive notion standardized testing as the sort of sole or primary measure for indicating academic achievement amongst African American and other students, but also link her comments to what I know is a good friend of hers, Dr. Edmund Gordon, who is 103 years old, who has done a substantive amount of work that he's currently still doing at 103 on assessment for what he calls affirmative development. It's a entirely different sort of conception of what the purpose of assessment is. There are many lessons to be learned, I think, from our history, from enslavement through the Brown decision, for example, around this question. And as Adelaide said, the question of is Black achievement under attack? There certainly has been under attack since the beginning of the country. So that's not a new challenge. The form it takes changes. That during enslavement, it was illegal for African Americans to learn to read, write, or compute. But despite that, we practiced each one, teach one, and whoever learned to read on the plantation would risk their lives indeed to teach others. So we have a tradition of understanding our collective responsibility in terms of education for ourselves and our children. James Anderson, who's the author of Black Education from 1865 to 1935, documents how after the Civil War, among the first institutions that newly freed African people established in the United States were schools. We had schools run by churches, schools run by community organizations. We completely paid for. We built the buildings, wrote the curriculum, paid for staffing, et cetera, internally. At the same time, this was in the South. At the same time, we advocated with state governments the necessity of state governments funding public education. It's important to understand that free public education was not widely available even to poor white children in the South at that time. And I point this out for two reasons. One is that we have a history of understanding that the responsibility for educating our children at the end of the day lays in our own hands. And at the same time that we work internally for self-determination, we have always accompanied those efforts with pushing the governments, local, state, federal governments, to do their duty, and in that sense end up expanding opportunities for the entire population. We know that during the 1930s or so, I think it was, the Rosenwald Foundation that many people associated with building Black schools in the South. But Dr. Anderson documents how the Rosenwald Foundation would go to small districts and say to them, if you change your curriculum to teach the children to be subservient workers, we will give you the money to build these buildings. And these community said, no, keep your money. We're going to build our own schools because our goal is to develop children who are going to be self-determining. Vanessa Siddle Walker has written several books where she documents the nature of teaching and learning under segregated Black schools during Jim Crow. And it was during that era that the relationship between schools and communities were very close. It was very clear that teachers understood their relationship to the whole child, to families, and communities. My point simply being is that the challenge, the way in which we need to continue to respond to these challenges that we have historical precedents for, and we need to study them and we need to learn from them. I also think, again, consistent with what Dr. Sanford said, we need to rethink the goals of education. The terms of literacy underachievement, as Adelaide has said, are based on very restrictive notions of what counts as evidence of learning. W.E. Du Bois talked about what he called double consciousness. And that, he argued, was the challenge that we have as people of African descent to both maintain the values and belief systems that have sustained us as a people over time, while simultaneously figuring out how to navigate what it means to be an American, right? And that we needed to always work in those two parallel veins. He gave an address at Howard University. I think this again would have been in the 30s, where he admonished the graduates from Howard that they needed to see what they had achieved, not simply as an opportunity to make money for themselves, but rather to be able to use their knowledge to help build and sustain the community. Along this parallel path around issues of equity have certainly been issues around segregation in public schooling. And Du Bois argued that the integration of public schooling is a social good, but that integration should not come at the cost of losing the opportunity to really study our own history and contributions to the world. In fact, at the time of the 1954 Brown decision, Zora Neale Hurston wrote in I think it was the Florida Sentinel, that the same argument that the process of desegregation of schools should not mean the abandonment of teaching our history and our culture. As you know, Zora Neale Hurston always said, I don't belong to the school of poor colored me, right? And the argument that she made that Black kids did not need to sit next to white kids in order to be able to learn. This reconceptualization, a broader conceptualization of the goals of education, broadly speaking, and certainly in the context of our community, has also historically been taken up in the history of African-centered education. So my colleagues and I in Chicago have developed independent African-centered schools over the last 50 years, all of which are still in operation. Third World Press, that published Adelaide's book, is now, I think, 56 years old and has been a major, it's actually the oldest Black publishing company in the world that has continuously published, really, in the world. And in African-centered education, the focus is to socialize children to understanding their creativity, their brilliance. We draw on the Kemetic construct of Ma'at, which is a philosophical concept coming from ancient Egypt that said that every human being is endowed with divinity and endless possibilities of development. Margaret, the Brown decision, as you all know, was partially argued based on the doll experiments, where they would give the children the black doll and the white doll and would ask them who was a beautiful doll, etc. But Margaret Beale Spencer has replicated that doll experiment. And when the two dolls were given to children who were in African-centered schools, as young children, they would say that the black doll was the beautiful doll. And she said, why? Because she's Black and beautiful, the little kids would say, right? But she also went on to look at older kids who were not in African-centered schooling or culturally focused schooling. And she said that while they would say that the white doll was the beautiful doll, they would have this contortions on their face because at this point in time, they knew that attribution now potentially could apply to them. The other younger children, she said, who weren't in the culturally focused program, who said that the white doll was the beautiful doll, she said, reflected that they understood that there was a societal view out there about Blackness, but because they were essentially ego-focused at 5, 6 years old, it didn't have anything to do with me. That's just what some other people think. The point of this being the understanding the power of racial socialization and positive sense of racial and ethnic identity that have to be part of our goals for the development of our young people. Many of you know that Wall Street was an African burial ground in the 1800s. The Schomburg Center in the 1990s advocated with the federal government to get Wall Street recognized as an African burial ground, a historic site. There's a beautiful monument in Wall Street that you can see, recognizing that. I'm about to go very fast about that. Excuse me. They worked with archaeologists from Howard University who among the things they did was to dig up remains. There was clear evidence of ill health. That was not a surprise. But they found that they hadn't expected, as that people had buried their dead with amulets in positions and markings on the body that said, I'm Yoruba, I'm Igbo. You might think I'm a slave, but I have never internalized that. My point simply being is that we have historical precedents that tells us what we need to be doing today in our communities to protect and develop our children. And the overarching argument that I'm making is that we have to have a parallel track, one track where we are advocating with schooling about what kind of schooling our children need to have robust learning environments on the one hand, but never to relinquish our own responsibilities in our communities to do what we need to do to develop strong and powerful children. So in terms of internal efforts, again, consistent with what we've always done in our history, we need to create what I call small liberated zones. The Harlem Children's Zone is one example of such an effort where we say, in these 4 square blocks, we own this. We are the ones who are responsible for the protection and development of our children. Recruiting, as is being done now under Diana's leadership, for example, in Indianapolis, the sororities and fraternities, Divine Nine. There's some 92,000 churches in the Black community across the United States, community organizations, developing and organizing new organizations where we are directly delivering the services and support for our children while we are simultaneously externally engaging in the political battles to make public education a robust site for learning for our children. We need to recruit elders, people who are former teachers, retired teachers, to build efforts to build a community of Black teachers. So there's the Black Teachers Project founded by Dr. Misha Mosley as one example, right? We need to create after-school programs, tutoring programs, mentoring, sports, arts, book clubs, etc., that are engaging our children, 7 days a week, etc., in terms of their development. Then finally, I'd just like to focus on what we need to be doing externally in terms of public education. Understanding, one, that the most powerful influencers are local, more so than they are federal. We need to be on local school boards, et cetera. We need to collaborate across groups to build a database to make available for actors to use as we engage in trying to shift public policy. We need to create media campaigns around what is needed. Create strategic plans to advocate with legislators and district boards of education, to create collaborations with teachers' unions, ACLU, practitioner organization, the National Education Association. And finally, just as important evidence is understanding that there are international assessments, PISA, Pearls, TIMS. You can look them up on the internet. PISA is given every 4 years internationally to 15-year-olds, and they produce what they call a social disparities report. And in it, they talk about nations in which being poor, being an ethnic minority, or being an immigrant status does not predict outcomes, where children in those categories perform at the top quartile on the international assessment. And we need to look at what those countries do to support robust environments for learning that we refuse to do in the United States. Final comment of sources of information for best practices. as we do this local organizing. The Learning Policy Institute, founded by Dr. Linda Darling Hammond, has many reports on best practices across sites, schools where robust learning opportunities for Black children occur, to be very careful of some claims that have come out in the media, like the science and reading efforts that are on that do not adequately represent the best research for our children. And finally, that to sort of reframe this achievement gap issue as what Gloria Latson Billings calls the education debt. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for this. And I pray
And I
that
have one last little comment that I
Yes, ma'am.
didn't get to talk about, but I just want to say that there is a scientific basis for designing learning and instruction and assessments in ways that build a strong sense of identity, motivation, and engagements. So that what we're talking about as education is not just some little lefty liberal thing that we want to do, but that there is in fact a strong scientific base for designing learning and instruction in the ways that we advocate.
it's all a part of educating the youth. And we have to be ready and prepared to do so. And again, Dr. Lee, thank you very much, because what you have provided has, guys, just giving us a path of what we need to do and understanding what we need to do as educators. And thank you again for your contribution. And next we will have Dr. Winbush. And Dr. Ray Winbush, he is the director of the Institute of Urban Research at Morgan State University. As a scholar and activist, he is known for his systems thinking approaches to understanding the impact of racism, white supremacy on the global African American community. His writings, consultations, and research have been instrumental in understanding developmental stages in Black males, public policy, and its connection to compensatory justice. He has been a speaker at the Selma Jubilee for many years. His writings include the book, The Warrior Method, a program for rearing healthy Black boys. And for this, I will let Dr. Winbush give you his title for his presentation today. And Dr. Winbush, I say thank you very much. And Dr. Winbush, welcome.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. I'm not feeling well. I think I told people before I have the flu, but
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to share my screen. And can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We always use the term school to prison pipeline, and we kind of emphasize the school and we emphasize the prison industrial complex. But I want to know, and I've been curious about the pipeline, because that's what, carries our young people from one to another. So what I'm going to do is show a video that I think captures this. I believe that the pipeline is the entire system of white supremacy that forces our students to do things that they may not ordinarily want to do. It's not only just the music, but it's how they're looking at television, a variety of things. So I'm going to do this video that I think captures that. Let's see here. From the old Arsenio Hall show.
Please welcome spoken word champion Prentice Howell.
Arsenio, the system don't want us here right now.
See, we live in a system that's designed for us to fail. A system that will tell you no matter how wonderful, how fantastic, how great you think you are, there is no you. There is only who I want you to be. From your latest cell phones to the style seen in your most recent videos to my implementation of what you call swag. If you can't brag about how many women you have or the $200 denim on your butt, you are worthless. Your purse is not hot if it is the fall edition and we are in the winter. And as long as your kids have Jordans on their feet, it is okay if they have to eat top ramen for a week for dinner. Your check is in the mail. You fail at becoming grown men, so you don't bother with your younger ones. Give them to me. I'll program them to Viacom. Have them growing up with a single mom and no males to emulate and wonder why so many begin to have extensive rap sheets and ADD with no off switch and download a defense that is nothing but false self-confidence shown through them being overly aggressive. Your misguided women want nothing but diamonds and Fendi, or dreams of finding a professional athlete to pay for their lives because to them being a wife is not a lifestyle, it is trendy. Trendy to have like a little black dog carried around in a bag, the demasculinization of your black man is going according to plan. Flip the coin, and for those who have chose not to go down that road, make sure that any statement they make that may challenge their masculinity are followed by statements of insecurity. We can't have them thinking for themselves. Program dreams to be a mirage. Close enough to see, yet too far to reach. Set their aesthetics to pathetic, AKA camouflage. Allow them to blend in, keyword trend. Downtown corners full of rappers who refuse to give up, even though their stuff sucks, but will allow them to say their piece. At the very least, it'll make them a quick buck. Any more success, initiate operation exploitation. Throw them a bit more cash. I am the system. Programmed to initiate commands. You Negroes, you people are programmed not to ask. You are nothing more than empty vessels who have sold their souls a long time ago, and you call me robotic. I am the system. Systematically set to just do. You are systematically set to just do and not think, and you call me robotic, error, redundancy, error, repeat, error, redundancy. Pardon me. I was scanning your culture's current popular music. You want a cop to pay for killing one of you, but carry a no snitching policy in your own community, which allows you people to have absolutely no accountability. Irony overload, reset. I am this system, systematically set to desensitize your senses and senseless activity surrounds your society, simultaneously making you love me while shaking in your boots. And for those who dare to overthrow me, allow me to remind thee, 'tis I who provides you with the land and seeds you use to grow your little grassroots. I am the system.
A mentor of mine, Neely Fuller Jr., many of you know who he is. He made his transition just a couple of weeks ago. He was the teacher of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, also a very good friend of mine. And this is what Neely said. He said, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else you think you understand will only confuse you. And we have to understand as educators that our students, once they get to us in college, teaching at an HBCU, that they've endured K through 12, what I call educational abuse. They don't know who they are. Not all of them, depends on where they went, But in general, there's a lack of teaching who they are as African people. And that's what Prentice Hall was saying in his video, that the system itself creates much of what we see in our children once they get out of high school and so forth. And it's at all levels. It's the books that they read, the music that they listen to, and so forth. I think that any organization, especially any Black educational organization, needs to make sure that our students at a young age understand how the system of white supremacy works. If they don't understand that, they're going to grow up to be very, very confused. I had a student about a year ago in my class, theories of personality. We were going back and forth, not, in a violent, argumentative way, but she was going back and forth. And then she kind of burst out and said, "Dr. Wimbush, where do you get your information from?" I said, well, I read books. I look at things on television that are educational. I said, but primarily books. She said, well, that's the problem. I get my information from the internet. And the internet is not a reliable source. It's a tool, but you have to be, scrutinized. Many of our children are getting information from the internet, and that's part of the system, again, that Prentice Hall talked about. So I'm going to, wind this up by simply saying we have to teach our children how white supremacy is, what it is, at young ages, so that they grow up understanding that they won't be confused. So I'm going to stop there.
Dr. Wimbush, wow. As a educator as well, teach on the college level, I do understand exactly what you're saying, because we do have a lot of African American students that I engage with that do not know who they are. And I respect exactly what you're saying because I see it on a daily basis. In my department, I am the one of two African American instructors and the first full-time African American male instructor. And I instruct more of my Caucasian students who come to me and ask questions than my African American students. And for what you're saying, I truly understand. But let me go ahead and move on. But thank you, because you have no idea how much I appreciate what you just said, because I see it on a regular basis. And it is something that we do as instructors, that we must engage to help our students understand. Well, let me be more specific. Our African American students understand who they are. Because it is so easy for some of us to forget who we are, where we came from, and what our forefathers endured for us to be able to have the freedoms that we have today. And with that being said, Dr. Wimbush, thank you very much for your presentation. And I will go ahead and move to our next presenter, who happens to be Dr. Patricia Payne. And Dr. Payne is an Indianapolis native who began her employment with the Indianapolis Public School System, IPS, as we are familiar with here in Indianapolis. And she began in 1962, following graduation from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. In 1987, she was appointed to design and direct the IPS Crispus Attucks Center, which comprised the Office of African-Centered Multicultural Education and the Crispus Attucks Museum of African American History. Presently, Dr. Payne directs the IPS Office of Racial Equity and Inclusion and the Crispus Attucks Museum. She has served as IPS at IPS for over 63 years, and she is the recipient of numerous city, state, and national awards. The title of Dr. Payne's presentation is IPS Racial Equity Movement, Mindset, Commitment, and Action. And with that being said, Dr. Payne, welcome. And it is my privilege because I have been knowing Dr. Payne for quite some time. And even though she says she is retired, let me say it like this. I'm originally from Mississippi. She ain't going nowhere. So, but Dr.
No,
Payne,
thank you
thank you
so
very much.
thank you so much. And I again want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this distinguished panel. I am sitting in my office at Crispus Attucks, so I'm not retired. I'm still with IPS, still hoping and praying. I am going to try to go to my I think it's right here. Good afternoon, everyone. And I am so sorry for that little waste of time there. But as I said, I have a lot of gifts, but technology is certainly not one of them. This was how my classroom looked when I stepped into it after I graduated from Indiana University and stepped into my second grade classroom full of beautiful Black children, because of course at that time, Black teachers taught Black students, white teachers taught white students. Sometimes I think that was a good thing. But when I went to look at the resources and the textbooks that were in the room, I found nothing that reflected my students, except the chapter on slavery. I said, oh no, hell no, this cannot be. Wow. I certainly taught my students to respect and honor our slave ancestors. There was much more to us than that. And so that's when I started. We say in IPS, we've gone from a movement to a racial, from a moment to a racial equity movement. So this is kind of like a timeline, because while we were raising hell, I went to others of like mind. I went to the Teachers Association and said, we got to do something about this. And so it took them until the school board till 1979 to do anything. We did not wait for them. We developed our own curriculum guide with the help of community members who thought like us, who understood the brilliance that Black children bring with them to the classroom. So this is kind of the timeline. It wasn't until 79 till they approved the teaching of Black history. That was only on the books. It wasn't in the minds of teachers yet. Then the office of, our office opened in 1987. It was started out as multicultural education. Now it is called the IPS Office of Racial Equity and Inclusion. So you know Trump's coming after that one. We have a beautiful state-of-the-art museum. When you go in the museum, the first thing you see is a pyramid going all the way up, so we can teach children that our history did not start on a plantation in America. It started in ancient Africa. I was on that trip with Diana when Dr. Baba Asa Hilliard was leading it. Let me go on to the next slide. Everyone in our school district has to go through this racial equity training, and it's 2 days from 9 to 5, and it's designed to help them understand systemic racism and white supremacy. Now, let me say, our school district has 90% white teachers and about 55% Black students. So you know how that's going, right? We are fighting an uphill battle. It was not until our superintendent, Dr. Alicia Johnson, came that the racial equity training was mandated. Now the state's trying to make it optional. And then you know what comes next. This 2-day 9 to 5 training is very, very powerful. It deals with the systems. It shows them how the system. And so we also have a historic racial equity policy that the school board even named 1619. So somebody was learning something there. We have a Black Lives Matter resolution that's full of the kinds of things you would want to see happen in a school district. Our vision is to reimagine an IPS where student academic outcomes cannot be predicted by race and ethnicity. I don't even have to read the rest of the wording. To reimagine an IPS where student academic outcomes cannot be predicted by race and ethnicity, because as it stands now, you know exactly who's going to be at the bottom before the test is even given. That's been going on since 1619 because of the laws, because of the attitudes toward us, the policies that are no longer on the books, but the residue is still there. Plus, you've got many, many other laws. Now you've got a president that wants to make us extinct. This is just an example to show you what we are up against in this public school district. I don't even have to really go through this to tell you what's going on, because you already know. When you look at this, of course, white is the standard going across. But just look at free and reduced lunch. Look at where we are. Not passing iRead. iRead is the state test in Indiana. Everybody has to take. If you don't pass this 3rd grade iRead test, you have to repeat the grade. So you see right here, not passing iRead. And you can also, it's also very interesting that Hispanic students are almost at the same level of Black students, and many of them can't even speak English. But look where they are. And then when you go to out of school suspensions, of course, the blue is all the way up. I didn't even tell you. And I don't even have to tell you that blue is for Black students. The orange is for Hispanic students, and the yellow is for white students. Not a surprise to any of you, I'm sure. We also have a mission that deals with community members who can come in and take this same training our teachers have to take. And it's not just certified teachers that have to go through this training. It's anyone who touches the life of a child in IPS. So custodians are here, bus drivers, and so forth. But we also invite the community to go through this training, because wherever they are, systemic racism is right there with them, shaping the outcomes of anything that they do. So we want them to also have the same training. This is one of the we use this in our training to show you exactly what's going on with Black children. Wherever they are laying belly up dead. This is an analogy. They are laying belly up dead because of the low expectations, because of the negative assumptions that are always made about them. And that mucky lake, that's the systems, all the systems working together, you see. I'm not going to go through this. These are just key observations about racial inequity. And for this group, I don't have to tell you what's going on with racial inequity. Colorblindness will not end racism. You've heard teachers say, I'm not racist. I treat everybody the same. Well, first of all, you're not supposed to be treating everybody the same. Pretending race doesn't exist is not the same as creating equity. Race is more than stereotypes and individual prejudice. To combat racism, we got to identify and remedy social policies and institutional practices that advantage some groups at the expense of others. The bookends, institutional racism, we say, are the bookends that hold all the other isms firmly in place. The monopoly game. We use this as an analogy. Everybody knows how to play Monopoly. Everyone's played Monopoly. But if you come into the Monopoly game 3 hours behind everybody else, what happens? Everything is gone. Everything is all bought up. So you don't mind if you get the card that says go to jail. You see, because everything is gone anyway. And I think this may be how Black students feel in the classroom when they are seated in the front of the teacher because they know they're going to get in trouble. Not them, but the teacher thinks this. When they are waving their hands because they know the answer, but they are ignored. So what do? They just withdraw from the process. Because obviously the teacher has already withdrawn from their lives. These are some of our milestones that we try so hard. At least the people in this office, we have a district equity team. All of our schools have school equity teams that we go in and train. I was at a school this morning working with the teachers, trying to help. Of course, all the teachers were white in the school equity team. Maybe you have 1 or 2 Black teachers in the school. This is a problem. This is a big problem. So we have all the schools with equity teams. Everybody has to go through the training. I do monthly, we have books. Right now, I think we are reading Courageous Conversations on Race, Glenn Singleton's book. We are trying to do everything we can to help these teachers and school leaders know that when those students come through that door, when Black students come through the door, their brilliance should not be ignored. We even have training for our parents. This is something on our school equity teams. We ask these teams to, first of all, look at disaggregated data. You cannot tell what's going on if you're just looking at data, but it's not disaggregated. We want them to explore the history of the community where their school sits. For instance, the school where I am in what we call the Indiana Avenue community. This community used to be filled with Black entrepreneurs on Indiana Avenue. You may have even heard of it. It's where the Walker Theater sits right now. That's about the only thing left. I mean, there were restaurants. There were one of our entrepreneurs even ran a watch repair shop, basket shops, anything you could think of. But what happened? Indiana University came through here and raped the entire community, so nothing's left. The houses, the schools, the stores that were there, gone. So these students and teachers need to know what was here before their school was there, so they can teach that history also. We want these school equity teams to present events that are accurate and racially and culturally responsive, and to study and apply everything in the school district deals with equity. In addition to the racial equity workbooks, we have given them a list of resources. What do you notice about race in your school? Are Black girls and boys suspended and expelled or put in school detention and sped at disproportionate rates? Yes. Are Black and brown students absent from gifted and talented class at disproportionate rates? Yes. Is racial equity reflected throughout the school and evidenced throughout instruction? What evidence demonstrates consistent parent and community collaboration? How are children grouped for instruction? Are African American children grouped with children from Haiti and Nigeria? Are Asian children? You can read. I don't have to read this to you. That last one, though, I will read. Are parents being judged or welcomed when they come into the school? If parents come in pajama bottoms and a blouse, they need to be welcomed. Because how can you really effectively teach that child without contact with the parent? That's what I always told my second grade parents. I need you. I need your help. I need your support. This is an equity study plan with many books, but I got to add Dr. Adelaide Sanford's book to this. These are just examples of how they can have study groups right in their schools to learn more about us and our brilliance. I'm not going to take them. This is just showing teachers examples of the kind of disaggregated data that we want. And this is an example that shows attendance of the total percent of students suspended. We know 84.5 were Black students. I mean, they ought to be embarrassed about this. This is disaggregated data on school attendance. This just shows that wherever you go, Black students are going to be at the bottom. Look at this. This is Indiana, but if you also go to Texas, it'll be the same thing. If you go to where Dr. Weston lives, Oakland, it'll be the same thing. And that is just disgusting. Our young ladies, this book I definitely recommend. Sometimes we are so involved with looking at what's going on with our young men, we forget what's going on with our young ladies. Now, this is in IPS. Look at this. And this was in 21, 22. It's probably even gotten worse. But look at where our young ladies, this is suspensions and expulsion for young ladies. So you see what we're up against. Just had the white man in here, is the head of the education committee for the Senate, the state Senate in Indiana. Now look at what he says about Black students. They don't do well on standardized tests because of poverty and a lack of respect for education. That's why we got these crazy bills coming out like we do. It's horrible. And yet, I'm still here. I am still here after 63 years because I don't know why, because except for Black children and how I believe in them, and I believe that somebody's got to be here to show these teachers the way. And I know I can't do it by myself. Thank God Diana is here doing everything she can. Dr. Jefferson is here, his family doing everything we can. These are just, Dr. Lee has already talked about this dial test. It's still going on right now. Our students would still pick white out. This is an ode from Dr. Peggy McIntosh. Whites are taught to think of their lives as morally neutral, normative, and average, so that when we work to benefit others, this is seen as work which will allow them to be more like us. I got 2 minutes, so let me even this gentleman, Albert Einstein, knows about racism. It's a disease of white people. This is Dr. Lisa Delpit. I love her book, Other People's Children. And now she has one called Teaching While the World is on Fire. I'm going to quickly go through. This just shows some of the resources that we have in our school district. This is the inside of the Crispus Attucks Museum. Sam Livingston is a local person that takes you through neighborhoods and identifies and gives you information about what was there before what is there now. This is a calendar of events. I swear we try to do everything we can to give these teachers information. We have a diversity cadre meeting that brings community resources in. We are on our 45th annual televised tribute to Dr. King. We are, in fact, next week we will have, I got to update this, our 6th annual Racial Equity Summit. We have been doing, at first they were called infusion conferences, and we started in 1987. In fact, Baba Asa Hilliard came here to help form our first infusion of African content into the school curriculum. And so we have been doing something every year since then to try to bring information and the best speakers to our school district. We have a spirit of freedom every fall where we honor African Americans who were in the Civil War, and we have reenactors where students can actually talk to these amazing people that nobody even knows about. We celebrate Juneteenth also. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to end with this poem. It's from the lyrics of South Pacific. You got to be taught to hate and fear. You got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You got to be carefully taught. You got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are differently made and people whose skin is a different shade. You got to be carefully taught. You got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. Thank you. I will now stop sharing.
Wow, Dr. Payne, absolutely, absolutely awesome. One point of clarification. Everyone has been calling me doctor. At the present moment, I'm not a doctor as of yet. I've had too many people say Dr. Jefferson, so I guess that's an indication that I should move forward.
I want people to call me Pat Payne too. Not
yes, but you are a certified doctor, so but that's different.
I'm not a certified doctor. I'm an honorary doctor.
but you have the qualifications where I'm not there yet.
Okay, but you know a lot.
Thank you. But thank you very much. But based upon the information that you've given, there is just such for what has been presented is almost has left me speechless. And for individuals that know me, I'm very seldom speechless.
Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, I'm not going to prolong our final panelist, and this is Dr. Kenneth Wesson.
Yeah.
And for Dr. Wesson, he is a former higher education faculty member and administrator, researcher, neuroscientist, and author. And there is so much more we could say about Dr. Wesson, but I will go ahead and pass on. But his presentation is going to be a text from multiple angles. Is any of this new? And with that, I will now pass on to Dr. Wesson. And Dr. Wesson, welcome to this panelist right now. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you. And you're on mute.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes. Thank you for the very nice introduction. And it was not only delightful, but enlightening to hear the previous speakers. Some of what I'm going to say will just reinforce what they've said, because it's all about the same truth that should be shared with all educators and with all members of our society. And so we look at attacks on Black education. We ask, is any of this new? But Black learning and Black education have always been under attack since the early colonial days of early America. William Faulkner said, "The past is never dead. It's not even past. It's always part of the present." And what we're seeing today is a continuation of the same attack on Black learning that has been part of American history for the past 400 years. If we look at American history from enslavement, all the way through the Jim Crow era, all the way to George Floyd. We say that American history does not exist for us to like it or not. It allows us to learn from it. And if conservatives find this upsetting, that just means the history lessons are changing their thinking, which might prevent our unpleasant history from repeating itself. The trouble U.S. history is not there to be erased or to be rewritten, but it's there to guide us for the future. And many of us acknowledged recently the anniversary of the Supreme Court decision from 1954, Board of Education, but we also had the Civil Rights Act, which outlawed racial discrimination in employment and in public places and businesses, signed into law by President Johnson in 1964. But then 6 days later, the present becomes the past when Trump revoked the Civil Rights Act just last month, making discrimination again legal. The attacks on Black education are nothing new. We saw it probably at its worst during the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and even 1980s. In 1896, the Supreme Court passed the made the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, which made the separate but equal doctrine part of the landscape of all America. And this included public education, where we had separate but equal education, and it was never equal, not even in the slightest. Black schools were overcrowded. In Virginia, the student-to-teacher ratio was one teacher for every 232 students in one room. A single teacher covered the entire 1 through 4 or 1 through 8th grade curriculum. Black schools were in school for fewer days because that allowed them to work in the fields. Black kids were excused to work on the farms during harvest season, or when whites just said Black kids don't need no schooling. But W.E.B. Du Bois said, a system cannot fail those who it was never meant to protect. And the American education system was never designed to support Black students. And so what do we see today in terms of those attacks on Black education? It's not attacking separate but equal, but it's banning Black history. As we heard earlier, Black history is described as being divisive and political, and it causes discomfort for white students. But what about the discomfort caused to Black students for decades, for centuries? No mention, crickets. Including African-American AP studies. But this is an effort to erase the historical injustices from America's consciousness. And books are being prohibited that are by Blacks or about Blacks as central characters, or books illustrative of the Black experience in America, including the Civil Rights Movement. Rosa Parks is now too controversial to be in our school libraries. But reading from a book about a gay character will not make you gay any more than reading a book about Einstein will make you a genius. And so if you're afraid that books might change someone's thinking, you're not afraid of books, you're afraid of free thinking. And there's been no time in world history when people who burned the books turned out to be the enlightened ones or those on the right side of justice. But burning books and banning books is actually part of controlling the narrative and controlling thought. And so people who threw rocks at 5-year-old Ruby Bridges for trying to go to school in 1960 are now afraid that their grandchildren will learn about those people who threw rocks at a 5-year-old for trying to go to school. And today, we're abandoning K-12 DEI programs and initiatives, prohibiting class discussions that link race, history, and oppression, defunding recruitment and support for programs for Black students in higher education, underfunding local schools. A 2022 study found that white schools receive almost $23 billion more in total than Black schools throughout the U.S. And attempting to defund or merge HBCUs, although HBCUs receive less funding than the predominantly white institutions, even though they may be serving the same size student enrollment. We have people who want to maintain legacy programs that favor historically wealthy families, where students who have the money can get into some of the schools only because their parents attended those same schools. And there's an interesting book called When Affirmative Action Was White that describes this in detail. We have prohibitions on culturally affirming pedagogy that inspires Black students to stay in school and to enjoy school and find school relevant and meaningful. Many of our schools, our kids drop out of school because we never acknowledged that someone like them ever dropped in. We're decreasing the number and availability of counselors in schools, but we're also increasing the number of police officers in school. And we impose harsh disciplinary actions, suspensions, and expulsions, as we heard from Dr. Payne and Dr. Winbush. And we have the gatekeeping, which we heard from Dr. Sanford, where we're gatekeeping college prep, gifted programs, AP programs throughout school based on selection criteria that requires teachers to recommend someone for GATE programs. And students of color get tracked into the lower levels of instruction. And the ACT and SAT actually reflect the wealth of the parents more than perhaps anything else. We now see the aggressive enforcement of anything that may be anti-Semitic, but ignoring all the dangerous anti-Black activities that take place on campuses. And this is from K through university level, from microaggressions to overt aggressions to something as simple as racial slurs that are very common. And today, we're still teaching history from a European or Eurocentric perspective and downplay the historical and ethical impact of colonialism, slavery, systemic racism, but still glorifying white supremacy. And white supremacy, as Dr. Winbush mentioned earlier, is the elephant in the room that we're not supposed to mention at any point in time. But white supremacy is something that has always been suspect. And this is an old article from 106 years ago. And the Surgeon General found that the percentage of illiterate Negroes in some states is smaller than that of whites, meaning that white people were better educated even when segregated, better educated than many whites, which is, again, an indication that white supremacy, white intellectual superiority has always been fiction. In spite of the many barriers that we see impacting Black education, today the achievement gap is typically 14 to 15 point difference. And if you look at everything that has impacted Black students, and whites have only achieved a 14 to 15 point difference, that certainly is not an indication of any sort of supremacy. And we're still whitewashing history and increasing the efforts to whitewash history. Slaves are now referred to as workers. The Middle Passage is called African migration to America. We're whitewashing the history of violence against African Americans during enslavement, lynchings, church bombings, white riots to prevent school integration, and downplaying the brutality of systemic racism, including the Selma to Montgomery March. Pardon me. When we look at the Tulsa race riots of 1921, America says, be all you can be the best you can be. African Americans were the best they could be. They were actually better in terms of an organized and thriving community than the nearby white community, at which point Black Wall Street was bombed and burned. Pardon me. The curriculum content. The curriculum content continues to exclude the significant contributions made by Blacks in science, literature, and medicine. And as Dr. Lee mentioned earlier, Timbuktu, Genet, Mulata, Gao, those were the centers of intellectual development in the world during the 8th through the 16th century. If you were a mathematician, a king, a philosopher, a doctor, a judge, or a priest, you were trained in Africa. And these were called the mystery schools. And the mystery is, why not tell the truth and tell children that Socrates, Plato, all of the great Greek minds and Roman minds were trained in Africa. The Great Pyramid of Giza. When we talk about the Pythagorean theorem was not developed in Europe. The Pythagorean theorem is actually from the work of Egyptians building the pyramids and other structures. But as we look at Black history from A through Z, I have loads of information on Black inventors that can be part of the school curriculum, but it's not. Gladys West, if you traveled today and use GPS, thank Gladys West. If you have a computer connected to any peripheral device, thank Mark Dean from IBM here in San Jose. And Dr. Marion Crook is a vice president of engineering at Google here in Silicon Valley, and she created the technology behind the Zoom that we're currently using. And so when we think of new axioms and changing the narrative about Black kids, what we have to do is think about an axiom, and axioms are undeniable truths like the sun always rises in the east. And our new foundational truths about Black children have to be, first, all Black children can excel academically. All students of color can demonstrate their brilliance every day. And the high learning goals we set for students of color can be reached when our students receive ongoing support. But 3 out of 4 gifted Black students are never identified. But they're everywhere. And here's Dorothy Jean Tillman, who earned an associate's degree at 10, a BA degree at 13, master's at 15, and just earned her PhD this past May at Arizona State University at age 17. Heman Bekele from Virginia was selected as the Time Kid of the Year for his work in developing soap that can actually cure skin cancer. And so when we talk about the attacks on Black education, today many of us are being attacked for being and shamed for being woke, as if being woke is an insult. But woke translates into being empathetic, enlightened, and educated on matters of racism, sexism, inequality, and systemic injustices. And we must remember that it was activism of woke people that gave African Americans the right to vote, women the right to vote. Woke people created Social Security, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Medicare, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and made the Board of Education decision in 1954 possible. Leo Tolstoy said, "Wrong doesn't cease to be wrong because the majority support it." And today we still have the majority of people supporting things that are dead wrong when it comes to Black education and helping Black children survive in our environment. And so, in closing, no one said that educating our African American students was going to be easy. What we said was it was always going to be worth it. And as you've heard from Dr. Lee, Dr. Sanford, Dr. Winbush, and Dr. Payne, it's definitely worth it. It can be done. Against all odds, we have been successful. And our goal is to work together far more closely than ever before in order for Black students to be successful, because it is definitely worth it. Thank you, and I'll turn things back over to Michael Jefferson.
Dr. Weston, thank you very, very much, because all of the information that you've given, and for each presenter, each panelist, thank each one of you for all of your information. And the one thing that I will say to each one of you is that just before we close out today, I will ask that each one of us, that each one of you come back online to give a closing statement. But if any of the viewers, if you have any questions, please make sure you continue to enter them in the Q&A box because we want to make sure your questions are answered by our panelists. And one item that Dr. Payne mentioned was about the Madam Walker Theater Center. And as a matter of fact, I was just at the Walker Theater this week, and I actually did an 80th anniversary documentary, short documentary on the Walker Theater, and I'm actually looking to do a 100th anniversary on the Madam Walker Theater. But one thing that she mentioned was that Indiana Avenue was at one point in time a street that a lot of African American businesses resided on. Today, only the Walker Theater remains, but guess what? Today, the Walker Theater is under IU, and that happens to be Indiana University. And if we want to maintain our legacy, we have to stand up and make sure we maintain our legacies. And a couple of questions for the panelists, and this can be to either of the panelists. In your classrooms, and this is regardless whether it's high school or college, do you believe that if you have a room that is mixed between African American students and Caucasian students, in order to get African American students engaged, do you believe we should ask questions directly to African American students to get them engaged? And this is to anyone.
To get students deeply engaged is less about teachers asking specific kids questions and about designing an environment where children are working collaboratively on complex problems for which they're not simple right or wrong answers.
And equally important, oftentimes teachers will call on students of color, putting them on the spot, and they have to become the spokesperson for their race or ethnic group. There's nothing more humiliating than making someone be the spokesperson when the question may not even apply to their lives, and other students may be thinking about the concept even more deeply. They may have far more to contribute. It's always better to, as we said back in the 60s, give kids time to think about their answers, then let students volunteer those answers. But calling on students and putting them on the spot, I think all of you can recall times when you've been asked to come to the blackboard to perform a math problem, and you don't remember the experience, you just remember the humiliation. You don't remember any learning that ever took place. So putting kids on the spot is never an effective strategy for learners.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And this can start at a very early age. You don't have to wait till students are in junior high school to apply what you've heard. I did it with my second grade students because I tried to make sure that everything that I did had some kind of reflection of who they were. And of course, especially I'm talking about our Black students. I would use sentences that maybe reflected a church that was in their community, because that would immediately attach them to what I was trying to get over.
Good. Okay, next question that we have. And this question is to Dr. Lee. Please speak more about your statement that educators should rethink the goal of education.
So in the this reflects back on Dr. Sanford's introductory comments. In the African tradition, we typically have what are called naming ceremonies, when a new child is born. And the purpose of that naming ceremony is not simply to announce the name of the newborn child, but rather a ritual that represents a joint commitment of parents saying, we are committed to doing all that we can to develop a child who will be a productive member of the community. And the community saying to the parents, we are partners with you in this process. In our African-centered schools in Chicago, we have 3. And again, the 2 elementary campuses are 26 years old. The early childhood program is 50 years old. Our teachers are called Mama and Baba. And what that signifies as a ritual to the children and to the parents, that we as teachers are partners in the holistic development of these children. As I said early on, the idea that education is simply a technical exercise to get a job is a very restrictive notion of the commitment of education. And equally important that in a society such as ours, public education also has a responsibility to prepare children for civic engagement. The National Academy of Education, you can go to their website. We have a report on educating for civic reasoning and discourse, and you can download the report, where we argue that democratic reasoning and engagement require, particularly in a country like ours, that is from the system of governance and its initial conceptualization was to be a society that could accommodate difference. Even when we go beyond the whole issue of racism and the like, was the conception that this was a place in which people could have very different points of view, but we would create a system of governance where people would have to learn how to cooperate, how to listen to one another, how to be empathetic, how to wrestle with complexity. And so equally important, public education is a place to prepare young people, for that work. It is simply a matter of fact that each generation has a responsibility to prepare the next generation for all that we anticipate they're going to have to wrestle with in life. And it goes well beyond getting a job.
Yeah. And if I might add to that,
Yes,
in
sir.
the U.S., as we're making efforts to ban books, to restrict thinking, in Finland, they're taking any book that's controversial and teaching students critical thinking, how to take information and make decisions about that information, how to detect misinformation, how to look for ideas that are not grounded in fact, and identifying those. Those are the kinds of things that, in many ways, tilted this last election towards the current incumbent. We won't say the name, but it was people who were ill-informed, misinformed, and people who were, they call them low information voters. They vote on emotions. And what we need to do is teach our students how to think. And that's the whole purpose of education. And that's the reason behind having a brain, is knowing how to think.
And if I could just add to that, sometimes when we point out these examples from countries like Finland, there's an assumption, and people will sometimes say this because they're homogenous, and they're not. And ethnicity is perhaps among the most powerful historical intergenerational conceptions of community identity. The boundaries of nation states change, right, over time. United States is a country of immigrants other than the indigenous populations who are already here with their own independent nation states, not tribes, but nation states, right? Why do we still, in Chicago, we have Chinatown, we have Little Italy, we have a whole neighborhood that's primarily East Indian. We put green dye in the Lake Michigan for what they call it,
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day.
right? that we those practices that transfer across time. And I want to say this, I'm going to try to do it very briefly, a little bomb. Some people may not like it. White ideology has certain assumptions tied to it that if you keep reacting to their assumptions, you stay in their loop. And the construct of race is one of them. These terminologies of black and brown are absurd constructs, right? So if there are no white people, there are no black people. All human beings are somewhere on the spectrum of brown, from cream to deep, beautiful, dark chocolate, right? They're not isolated. You got people. When I was in Malaysia, this is a long time ago. I'm in the airport going through, and there's all these people, Malaysian people lined up, deep, dark, chocolate brown people. Well, what are they supposed to be, right? And so all of these terms that we use, people of color and BIPOC and whatever, all this other stuff that come on, keep us in. Even the term black is just a response to the negative associations that have been made. But saying that we're people of African descent who can be seen across not only in the continent of Africa, but across the diaspora, puts us in history and time and space, right? So all I'm saying is, and that is complicated because we are both people of African descent. If we were on the continent, we might also be Nigerian as a nationality and Yoruba as an ethnicity. You know what I mean? The indigenous population of South Africa are the San people, who are very light complexion. They know white, whatever in their DNA that they didn't get to be light because of white people. You know what I mean? In their history, the Zulu and Xhosa people are the immigrants to South Africa. So I'm just saying all this stuff is complicated, and I just think the use of terminology is very, very important to orient how we think, and that we have to push past this spider web of assumptions built into this ideology of white supremacy. White people are not homogenous. The whole 20th century was them fighting each other. Lynching was invented when the British were lynching the Scots before they came over here.
That's true. And that's a history lesson that a lot of people don't know.
People the power to define, because then all you can do is react to them.
And this is what they did to each other.
Yeah.
So just imagine what's happening to us. And it's still happening today.
And let's also be clear, we don't always like each other. All right? Let's go into Ethiopia and Eritrea. The Liberian, whatever. There are no communities of human beings who are pure. That's part of makes us human.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to see this video, the entire, from the beginning until the end of this. Actually, Michael has recorded it. We would like to send it out with your permission. We will first send you a copy of it, and anything you would like to see erased or challenged, or we will certainly allow you to actually do that, but we would like to send it out widely. And especially at this time of what we're going through through education as a community, as many hands as we can get this into, especially parents and especially teachers in school districts. I'd like to have some comment from you about that.
That's fine. Diana, I stay off school. I want to say that because we in Africans in Education, Chicago, we've been doing this for 50 years. 50 years. That means we got old people who came out of our schools. And the one thing that is, several things is powerful about them. I have an African name, Safisha Matabuti. These little 50-year-olds that, 45-year-olds that we taught when they were little, see me today will still call me mama. Okay? the idea of Black inferiority is not an issue. They don't have to go around beating their chest, Black is beautiful, Africa did great things, whatever, because that ain't even a question for them. They see themselves as citizens of the world. They totally understand their power. They create institutions and businesses, right? They are not caught in this web of negative assumptions about who and what they can be. We had one cohort of when they came out and they went to, because we went to elementary school, they went to one of these prestigious high schools in Chicago. They're in this U.S. history class, and this teacher is teaching them some mythical kind of stuff about Columbus. They formed their own Black History Club on their own, said, and told the teacher, that ain't right. What you saying ain't historically true.
That was good.
So I think part of it is, part of what I hope comes out of what everyone has said is, it ain't a question about whether we can do it. The question is about who are we dependent upon to get it done, right? Our ancestors, I always say, those ancestors buried in Wall Street imagined us. They never internalized the idea of them being slaves. I don't use the term slave owner. I use the term people who thought that they owned other human beings. That was their little piece of mythology, right? So for me, part of the history and studying that history is understanding what we're talking about is absolutely possible because we've been doing it for generations. The challenge is this generation, us, young people, have to take up. I say this is a long distance run. They have passed, Mary McLeod Bethune passed the baton on to, baton on to us. W.B. Du Bois, he passed the baton on to us. It's our challenge to take it up and add a new whatever to the current challenges and pass it on. White supremacy has never been, those statistics, Pat, that you were showing, right?
Yeah.
Kids get kicked out of school and suspended. It's our job to there's a parent organization, not just the individual parent. There's an organization of parents in that school who come up and say, you can't do that, right? And when they get kicked out, they got a place to go. That's not simply on the individual parent.
It's the community. It's the community. Right. We have one more question.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, I have another statement too from Miss Cynthia Fay. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And what she says, thank you, Dr. Lee. Beautiful. I will never forget being in your genius presence in the School of Education and Social Policy in Northwestern University classroom in 1992. So that's one of your former students.
All right.
Now, one of the questions that another one of the questions that we have. Oh, but before I get there, they also wanted to find out whether or not the slide presentations that were provided today, whether or not those also will be available. And so we have individuals that want to know whether or not the slide decks will be available to them as well. But the question that we have is, what is the solution? What would happen if we refuse to go to public schools until they meet our demands?
One of the things that has come up in our Tuesday meetings with the Divine Nine, there's this conversation around when testing time comes, we take all our kids out. Don't let them take it. That's been a big discussion because they understand that the testing is going to show that the kids will not do as well. Why put them through it? Why even do that? Take the kids out. And what can the state do? Well, not much. They can't do much at all. So
But
that's
the challenge in part becomes, for example, in Chicago, in the Chicago public school system, in order to get into a high performing high school, you have to have test scores. I think I understand that level of activism at one level, but I think that we need to, there are a number of communities in which parents organize Saturday schools
Yeah.
right? I'm not prepared to run away from the test. I'm very clear that it's restrictive and it really is a whole lot that it doesn't tell you at all, right? I get that. But I'm not prepared to say that I can't get my kid ready to deal with it, but I shouldn't have to do it by myself, right? So that's why I've said this notion of parallel tracks. One track in which you are active in the school community, at the school board, at the state level, you're dealing with all of that, and you're going to get little wins, slow but steady. And while that's happening, we want to be organized as a community. 92,000 churches. In Chicago, I can drive every block, got 2, 3 churches on it, right? And the young people are not in them, right? That's why those who end up in gangs, because they, the churches aren't doing their job. But if we take this on, we need to get in a position to say, you got a test, bring it on. Bring
And
it.
I have to.
That's also part of the conversation. They are talking about Saturday classes. That's the biggest thing they're talking about is Saturday classes and bringing in resources to the communities. So that's one committee that is dealing with, the committee is on Black achievement. And that's what they're talking about. There's 5 committees that we are actually working with. There is one committee that says, take the kids out. Just don't even fool with that because we know how they use it. And Indianapolis is predominantly charter schools. It's predominantly 62 charter schools within the city, 62. And they're all they're all located in the Black community. They're not located in white areas of the state, white areas of Marion County. So you got all Black, you got charter schools that are all Black. Then you have some public schools that are predominantly Black. But that's what has happened within Indianapolis. So the Divine Nine and the 100 Black women, the 100 Black men, and a lot of other nonprofits meet every Tuesday. And our focus is upon what is the solutions. So we divide into 5 committees. Each committee is coming up with their own solutions of how to ease this burden that are falling on parents. And especially since the times have changed and there's no more DEI money out there and so forth. So there's lots of conversations on those Tuesdays, led by principals, led by superintendents, led by John Q. Public is on there talking about what it is that they need. Ken's on there every Tuesday helping to guide us and help us to get us into the right direction. We have some dynamite young people that are members of the Divine Nine, and that's males and females. I mean, they're dynamite, but they don't have the background knowledge. They don't have the historical knowledge to make decisions, and that's what is missing. What is missing. They have great ideas, but they can't dig deep enough to pull up examples of where this has happened in other places. So that's part of the research that we actually need, and Ken has been helping us to have that kind of research. As far as churches are concerned, we don't have not one minister involved, not one. So that's another issue, getting them involved, because they do control congregations and they can help, but they're not involved. They're not involved. So hopefully as this thing moves forward and gets stronger each week, last week we had, how many people were on last weekend? I think it was 25 people or more, 34 people were
Almost,
on.
yeah. Approaching 30.
Yeah, 34 people on that call. And they were from all walks of life, school principals, superintendents, they were all walks of life. But still, there are gaps that we need to touch. We need businessmen on those calls. We need bankers on those calls. There's a whole new perspective that is not involved. So as we meet each week, we are gathering them more and more and more. So the ultimate goal is to have a actual plan in place over each of the 5 areas. that we are actually working in have a total plan in place. We have a resource development committee. That's the committee who's writing the grants to help us to answer what those concerns are. But we're doing profiling. We're seeing what they actually want to have happen. It's labor. It's a lot of labor to pull this together. But this has helped because this will go out to the whole city. We'll send it out to everybody we can send it to. We have 11,000 people on our e-blast system. All 11,000 will get this recording. That's helping to start the conversations more. So, Carol, I don't know how to thank you. You and Ken and Ray, who's gone. I know Ray's not feeling well. Pat Payne, thank you. Michael, thank you for stepping to the plate. It's been a fantastic, fantastic experience. And we're hoping to make more of these to get these things floating at places. We got to get the videos out there floating about people talking. And the conversations being led by our researchers. That's the whole key. It's not just people talking, but people who've done the work, people who can cite the examples. People can tell you what to read. That's what is needed. We need that leadership. And I thank Linda for having the conference back in July. And I sent 7 members of the Divine Nine to it. So I think we are starting to get things moving.
Well,
And go on.
I was just going to say, I think that Indianapolis and what you're doing is a superb model of what has to happen, city by city,
Our city.
town by town. I will say 3 simple, quick things. One is there's a lot of talk about charters. The problem isn't the charters. The problem is who's on the board of directors of the charter, right? And so when we made the decision to start our charter network in 1998, which they initially denied us, our argument was this was our money being spent, right? And so we have an African-centered, Black-run, charter school network, and I think more people need to take advantage of these opportunities because you don't have the same restrictions that you have in regular districts. The other is I think that we have to, some places we've had this in Chicago, like a council of elders, where there are elders who are available to support younger people, in doing what you had addressed. And finally, I'm sure you all could recruit people like Pastor Barber, and others to really come in and reach out to the church leaders and pastors, in your community. So you're not just dependent on them to decide, but you got a full force in whatever the religious.
Yes.
Maybe.
Charter schools in Indianapolis were mainly formed by whites. And so you form your board when you form the charter school. So you pick your board members, and that's who is still there. We did some research on that, and we found that majority of the charter schools were like 60% to 70% were all white boards. Mm-hmm. We only found 3 schools that had 50% black boards. Now that's what needs to change because there's a total they're not blacks are not represented on those boards.
And they don't have certified teachers.
And don't have certified.
They have warm bodies.
There's a lot going on with that, Mm-hmm. But we're just starting to pull this cover off. We're just starting to uncover all of these things that we know are wrong for our children. And the next step, if we uncover, we got to spread this word that these parents don't send those kids to those kind of schools.
That's right.
So I mean, we're starting it, but it's a long road. It's a long road.
Always has been a long road.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it because we're going to change the lives of some children. And that is our commitment. And Pat's right in there struggling with it. It is very, very difficult.
It's a struggle.
So, but we don't stop. We keep meeting on Tuesdays. We keep doing what we can. We keep writing grants. We keep going out getting the dollars we can to support the work. And this is how we know that eventually we're going to have this council of elders that represents the whole community. And this council of elders is going to be able to speak out because they're not working. They're not.
And they're not scared. No fear.
They can say what they want to say.
That's right.
Got to get to that point where this council of elders are actually the spokesperson and not those who are working. And who they be.
Who did you say your husband was?
Hakeem Matabuti.
Lord have mercy. Oh, wow.
Married 51 years, together 56 years.
Oh,
Oh
my.
my gosh.
Fantastic.
I knocked my thing back up.
Well, Michael has just joined us. We kind of drafted you, didn't we? And
yes, ma'am.
just drafted Michael. But you see what a great job he does. He has the equipment. He has the knowledge to bring these type of settings into a place. I'm in Selma. You're in Indianapolis. Ken's over in San Francisco. And here we are all having this conversation because this young man knows how to work the
Well,
so hopefully have more of these.
but I tell you what, the one thing I understand, and that the Bible also states, we all are one, but we all are different members. And just as we are one body, each limb has its own purpose. Right. And this is I'm just part of the body. And I may not be the brain, I may not be the heart, but yet and still, I'm part of the body that makes it work, make the body work. And speaking of religious, pastoral speaking, my son happens to be a third generation on one side, fourth generation on the other side. I'm going to voluntold him as I was drafted in as well. But we also have another pastor that's on here that wants to be added to the list. And that is Pastor Darrell Gray. And I will make sure, Ms. Daniels, that I provide you with his information so you can add him on to the list. And Pastor Gray, thank you very much for providing your information. And we will Ms. Daniels will make sure that you are added to the list, and we will keep up with you to make sure that you are a part of this. And it just so happens that as I was volunteering my son is actually on the phone right now calling me, and he doesn't know that he is now on a live Zoom presentation as I am holding him up on the speakerphone right now. So he has been voluntold to be a part of the Selma Educational Summit.
Yes, he is a part
as a pastor. So how are you doing, son?
I'm well. When and who are you talking to?
Well, one person that you do know, and it is Dr. Pat Payne. There are others that's on
gosh.
Here. Yes.
The legendary Pat Payne. Yes.
Yes. And so I was speaking with Miss Daniels and others that are on this call because we graduated from HBCUs.
Yep.
And because of that, we understand our parents are from Mississippi. As I said earlier, my grandmother is the first generation teacher on my side of the family. Her mother, my great grandmother, could do math in her head faster than my grandmother could. Mm-hmm. And she did not go to high school. And this is what we should remember, and this is what we should teach our kids about who they are. And this is some of the things that my son has been taught. And going back to something that Dr. Lee said, and I know we're at our closing hour, and I'll say this real quick. One of the things, as well as Ms. Daniels, about getting away from the standardized test My son, he's our firstborn of 4, literally blew the SAT and the ACT test out of the water. And I do not,
They're
and
brilliant.
I do not recall how many scholarships he was able to receive going to college. He had a choice of anywhere, and now he's on. And please correct me, son, if I'm incorrect. He's going for his 5th
Yes.
degree. Yes,
Really?
his 5th degree. And I tell him, look, just go ahead and get your PhD. But these are certain things that we should continue to teach our students.
Right. Right.
Education is a part of it, but it's what you do with the education that matters more than anything else. And for the educators that are on this line right now, I say thank you, because without you, we wouldn't be where we are today. As an educator, my son as a 4th generation educator, 4th generation pastor, and this is where I say thank you.
You need to write a book about your family.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Well, this is just part of it. You'd be surprised at some of the other part. Ann Moody.
No, I wouldn't.
Some of you guys may have heard of Ann Moody. You may have to look her up. She's also a part of my family. The Winans are a part of my family. So yes, just a little tidbit. But it takes all of us.
Yeah.
It takes all of us to make sure that we can continue on with this message. And
Can I just say one more thing to Dr. Lee?
Yes, ma'am.
Mari Evans and Marshariki Jawanza talked about you all the time. Oh my God. Hakeem Mahabooty. I knew you were great, but my gosh, all you all have done in Chicago is truly amazing, and I thank you. I wish we could do the same in Indianapolis, but Diana's got us. We on the road. We are on the road.
We're on the road. As a matter of fact, people from Selma want us to send this video. They want to send it out. So I told them to get back. We'll send it to them, and they can send it out through their system. I'm just so pleased to be here in Selma. I had a hard time getting to where I am. I got
there.
Somebody picked me up in Montgomery and went 90 miles an hour down the road. And
They were driving like me.
I got to the bridge.
It was a